Okay, so let's just get in the story. A few weeks ago, I was heading to Orlando, and we had a little girl who I don't know if she was afraid of flying. I don't know if she just was tired. I'm a mom, so I understand kids being upset or something's going wrong. So I'm working the back, and I noticed she's already discombobulated. She can't be no more than 3 or 4. Her family probably looks like they rushed over from another gate. They just look all discombobulated. We finally get them seated. It's time to push back and for us to do our demo. So it is FAA's policy that if a child is over the age of 2, it's 2 and over, they have to sit in their own seat. So the little girl's way too big to be a lap child. So we're like, just make sure she's in her seat for taxi, takeoff, and landing. Just the main components of, like, you can pick her up as soon as we get in the air. So I'm doing my little demo, and she won't get in her seat. And she's screaming and hollering, and I'm like, oh my gosh, no. And at certain points of movement on the plane, people have to be in their seat or we can't move. So, they're trying to get her situated while we're doing our demo. And I'm like, okay, you guys gotta get her seated. So I walk up to them and they're like, well, can you tell her? And I was like, hey, are you getting ready to go to Disney? And she's like, no. And she starts screaming and hollering and all that. And I'm like, okay. So, we finish our demo, we're taxiing, and I'm like, she's like laid out in the middle of the aisle. And, at this point, it's a safety concern because we can't move with her being out in the aisle. It's not really safe. It's just not the best place for a toddler to be kicking it during a flight. So another one of my coworkers is trying to get her to calm down. We're like trying to bribe her with cookie chips and all that. And then finally we have to call a pilot. So we have to go back to the gate. And so everything kind of gets quiet except her. People are like, do you have earbuds? Do you have headphones? Are you going to play a movie? Like, I'm like, oh my gosh. So we're like, I go up to her and I was like, you want some chips? Do you want some? I was like, you want some juice? Do you like some water? At this point in time, she's like sitting in her mom's lap, slapping the bejesus out of her and calling her a liar. And the parents are swapping, trying to get her situated. And I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna have to go back to the gate. So, we're all like having this great debate. We call the pilots and they're like, well, they have a few more minutes. We're on a delay. And I was like, okay, cool. So we're like, hopefully she gets situated during the delay. And no. Y'all, I've put off adults for being drunk or being obscene or being rude or being disrespectful. I've never had to put off a 3-year-old. So, I'm sitting here, me and the crew are sitting here trying to find all possible ways to get this little girl to work with us and be okay. That does not work. So we call the pilots and they're like, is she in her seat? And we're like, no. And they're like, well, we're going back to the gate. And then the pilots come on and they're like, well, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we're going to have to turn around and go back to the gate so we can remove somebody from the airplane. And then everybody kind of gets quiet. It's like that dead silence, like in this scary movie before like something horrible happens. And like the little girl is like sitting on the floor in between her seat and the behind and like kicking the people in front of her. And the grandma's like, well, she's sitting down and quiet. I'm like, well, she's sitting on the floor. I'm like, I can't take off with her on the floor. And they're like, well, is there anything you can do? And I'm like, there's nothing I can do. I'm thinking, if I was my child, I don't know you're thinking, what can you do to keep a child calm? Like, I didn't know if she was nervous from flying. I didn't know what was going on. So I was trying to do everything I would possibly do to keep Dorian comfortable, but it just wasn't working. And then at that time, I had to just be like, I can't do anything. I'm not her parent. So you guys are going to have to do something. So we end up going back to the gate, and 2 managers came on, and they're like, I'm sorry, we're going to have to remove you from the plane. And I just felt so bad. But as soon as they got off the plane, so many people were like, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm like, it's not really a thank you situation. The little girl is going to miss out on Disney because she did not comprehend the fact that she has to sit down. But her grandma was still on the plane, and she's all looking at us like, I'm like, there's literally nothing we can do. I try to make sure, the one thing I try to make sure is that children are safe and comfortable as possible. If anything happens, I usually know where my lab children are, my unaccompanied minors are. I know where my little kids are. So that way, if anything happens, I know how to get to them, and I know who they're traveling with, or if they're an unaccompanied minor, I know I have them in my sight. And I would hate for anything to happen on the flight and a child get hurt, and then I feel like I could have done something better to prevent it from happening. So, moral of the story is that sometimes you do have to do stuff that you truly don't want to people that you really don't want to do it to. Like, nobody wants to be responsible for putting a child off the plane because they didn't want to act right, but also nobody wants to be responsible to letting a family know that, during takeoff we hit some turbulence and a little girl hurt herself so badly that she needs to be rushed to the hospital. So I had to take one for the moms everywhere and be like, I'd rather my child be as safe as possible on this flight instead of being a mom who really wanted to get to Disney on this flight. And I was like, I couldn't imagine anything happening to this little girl, let alone any child, because they weren't in their seat and me not saying anything. So you guys just remember that this job is not always glamorous. Sometimes you're going to have to put off passengers, and sometimes it's going to be a passenger that you very least likely expect. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys so much. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any questions, you can shoot them to me on Facebook or leave them in the description box below. And don't forget to stay fly. Bye, guys. Bye.